Hello everyone, and I would like to wait for a few minutes. السلام عليكم جميعا وأهلا فيكم. فرح ننتظر شوي لحتى نتأكد أنه جميع المشاركين واللي حابين يحضروا الجلسة صاروا داخل الجلسة. فتقريبا رح ننتظر 1 minute مش أكتر من هيك وبعدين رح نبلش. Welcome to the fourth student session of the iOS Design Challenge. أهلاً فيكم بالجلسة الرابعة من تحدي تصميم iOS، وهيدي الجلسة طبعاً خاصة بالطلاب. تركيز خلال هاي الجلسة رح يكون على إمكانية الوصول. So the focus on this session will be on accessibility, and also we will go over important reminders like students' tasks and program timeline and updates and towards the end we will focus on accessibility. خلال هاي الجلسة أكيد نحن رح نستعرض تذكيرات جدا مهمة مثل مهام الطلاب والتسليمات والجدول الزمني للبرنامج والتحديثات. يعني في تحديثات جديدة رح نتكلم عنها اليوم، وأكيد بنهاية الجلسة رح نركز على قضايا إمكانية الوصول. طبعاً قبل ما نبلش بحب ذكركم بحالي، اسمي حنان حسن، أنا مدرب معتمد من أبل. So before we continue this session, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Hanan Hassan, and I am an Apple Professional Learning Specialist and Apple Distinguished Educator. All right. So first of all, we will start with the important reminders, like what will students do in the iOS Design Challenge. So basically, students, they have to select one of the sustainable development goals, and this is of course in line with global trends. So they may choose quality education, affordable and clean energy, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, and finally climate action. And to know more about this, of course, you can scan the QR code available on the screen. So أول شغلة رح نحكي فيها شو المطلوب من الطلاب. طبعا بالتوافق مع التوجه العالمي رح يختار الطالب وحدة من الخمس أشياء الموجودة، اللي هي مثلا تحسين جودة التعليم، توفير الطاقة بتكلفة معقولة، توفير الطاقة بتكلفة معقولة حكينا عنها already، بناء مدن ومجتمعات مستدامة، ترشيد الاستهلاك والإنتاج المسؤول، وأخيراً اتخاذ إجراءات للتصدي لتغيير المناخ. طبعاً تختاروا وحدة من هاي الكاتيجوريز لحتى يكون الشغل الخاص بتطبيق تحدي تصميم iOS بهيدا الخصوص. I would like to remind you of the submissions that you are required to submit. So for example, work on and deliver all activities found in the learning management system. Number 2, design and build an application prototype and submit it. Number 3, create and submit a 3-minute video. Attend all guest speaker sessions and finalize all the missions that is available on the app journal. بالنسبة للأشياء اللي لازم على الطلاب إنه يكملوها خلال هيدا البرنامج، هناك أشياء معينة مثل مثلا العمل على تنفيذ جميع الأنشطة الموجودة في المنصة، تصميم وبناء نموذج تطبيق، إنشاء وتقديم فيديو مدته 3 دقائق، حضور جميع جلسات الخبراء، وهيدي جلسة من جلسات الخبراء المفروض أنكم تحضروها، إكمال جميع المهام في مجلة التطبيق. Regarding the program timeline, So basically, as you all know already, that expert sessions started on January, and we will continue the expert sessions till March. On 21st of April 2024 is the challenge submission, and this is very important. On 21st of May, we will announce the winners, all right? And after that, on September 2024, the winners will start the Swift Accelerator Program. So بالنسبة للجدول الزمني للأشياء اللي عم بتصير بخصوص هيدي المسابقة، مثل ما أنتم بتعرفوا نحن بلشنا جلسات الخبراء من شهر 1 ورح ننتهي منها بشهر 3. يعني آخر جلسة رح تكون بشهر 3 ورح نحكي تفاصيل بعد شوي. بالنسبة لتسليم التحدي رح يكون ب21 من الشهر الرابع 2024، وبالنسبة بخصوص الإعلان عن الفائزين رح يكون ب21 من الشهر 5 2024. رح يتم الإعلان عن الفائزين بهيدا الوقت، وأكيد الأشخاص اللي رح يربحوا رح يبلشوا بشهر 9 2024 السويفت اكسلريتور بروجرام. بالنسبة so regarding the guest speaker sessions, basically we are now doing the 4th session, which is about accessibility, and it will take place from 5:30 to 7. But regarding the next session, which will be on 13th of March 2024, and which will be about creating your solution and video, it will be from 3 o'clock to 4:30 o'clock. So please remember that the timing of the session will be different during the coming session. So بالنسبة لجلسات الخبراء، طبعا اليوم جلسة اليوم اللي هي اللي نحن عم نعملها اللي هي خاصة بإمكانية الوصول، بلشناها على الساعة 5:30 ورح تخلص الساعة 7. بس بالنسبة للجلسة القادمة اللي هي ب 13 من شهر 3 2024 رح تبدأ الساعة 3 وتخلص الساعة 4:30. يعني رح يكون في تغيير بالتوقيت، ورجاء سجلوا هيدي الملاحظة عندكم لحتى تتأكدوا أنه تحضروا السيشن بالوقت اللي لازم تحضروا فيه. هلا we will talk about challenge updates. So there are important updates you need to know about. So حاليا رح نتكلم عن تحديثات هامة جدا في البرنامج لازم تكونوا عارفينها بالتفاصيل. The first update, I would like all of you to know and remember that the closing date for the registration will be on 17th of March at 11:59 p.m. So the closing date for registration will be on 17th of March. أول تحديث هام جدا ولازم تكونوا عارفينه كتير منيح هو التسجيل رح يسكر ب 17 من شهر 3 الساعة 11:59. هيدي رجاء تذكروها، لأنه يمكن في ناس بعد حابة تسجل. إذا في حدا حابب يسجل لازم يعمل هيدا الشيء قريبا مشان ما يروح عليه التسجيل. Regarding the second important update, the submission date will be on 21st of April. So the final submission is 21st of April at 11:59 p.m. بالنسبة للتحديث الثاني أو الشيء المهم اللي بدنا إياكم تعرفوه إنه تسليم التحدي رح يكون ب21 من شهر 4 الساعة 11:59 p.m. بالنسبة لآخر update, so the last update, and please save the date, it's the celebration, and the announcement will be on 21st of May. آخر شيء مهم بدنا إياكم تعرفوه اللي هو الإعلان عن الفائزين، والاحتفال رح يكون ب21 من الشهر الخامس، وأكيد رح يوصلكم تفاصيل عن الوقت والمكان. So definitely you receive an email that has more details about the timing of the celebration and the location. Here, I would like to remind you of what the winners of the iOS Design Challenge will get. So basically, they will get a new iMac, a new Mac, sorry. What does that mean? So if you are a group of 4, each one of you will get a Mac. This is the first thing. The second thing, all of you will get 180, all of the winners will get 180 hours of coding, instruction, and project work. Also, you will get lots of design and coding resources and Apple Pro level certification. And finally, the opportunity to publish an app on the App Store. So we are talking about the top 200 student winners. بالنسبة للفائزين بهيدا التحدي اللي هن رح يكونوا أعلى 200 يعني 200 طالب رح يكونوا. أول شيء لكل طالب مشترك، حتى لو كنتوا فريق من 4 أو 3 أو 2، كل طالب مشترك من الفريق الفائز رح يكون له جهاز ماك جديد، رح يكون في 180 ساعة من تعليم البرمجة والعمل على المشاريع، رح يكون في موارد التصميم والبرمجة، كل الموارد رح تقدروا تدخلوا عليها. كمان شهادة مستوى احترافي من أبل. وأخيراً اللي هي أكثر شغلة أنا بحسها رائعة رح تكون الفرصة لنشر تطبيق على متجر التطبيقات. It's very important to know that whenever you have any issue with the learning management system, you can easily contact the iOS design team to help you. You can contact them by sending an email to iosdesign@salwatan.ae. في حال واجهتم أي مشكلة بالمنصة، رجاء التواصل مع الفريق المختص بالاي اس ديزاين تيم على الايميل اللي موجود على الشاشه اللي هو iosdesign@salwatan.ae. And as we said at the beginning of this session, that the focus today will be on accessibility. So تركيز اليوم خلال الجلسة، والخبير اللي راح يكون معنا هو مختص بإمكانية الوصول. هيدا الشيء اللي حكيناه بالأول. أود أن أقدم خبيرتنا لليوم اللي هي كارين هارت، اللي هي معلمة مميزة من شركة أبل وخبيرة في مجال إمكانية الوصول. So as I introduced and said at the beginning that today's session will focus on accessibility, I would like to introduce our expert for today's session, who is Karen Hart, who is an Apple Distinguished Educator and an accessibility specialist. Karen, it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Hanan, and it's really nice to join you today. Let me just share my screen quickly. Just hold on.
Okay, just a second.
Okay, let me share. Here we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, so thank you so much for having me today. Before we get started, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am an accessibility specialist, and I also do app development, just like you guys. I create apps in Arabic Sign Language. All right, so I don't know if you know this, but according to the World Health Organization, 1.3 billion people live with some form of disability in the world. And that's a massive number if you think about it. Now, if we are creating apps that go out in the world and we do not consider the group of 1.3 billion people, how many people are missing out on the wonderful apps that we've created and don't have access to it because we don't think about them when we create apps? So this is one of the reasons why accessibility is so important for me as a accessibility specialist, but also one of the keystones of Apple's development strategy is about accessibility. And accessibility has been part of Apple's design and their devices from the beginning when they started creating Macs and iPhones and iPads. Accessibility has always been part of that. It wasn't something that was bolted on. It was part of, I always say, the DNA of the device. And that's what I love about working with Apple products, is because they have accessibility built into that. So let's see what you can do with the accessibility features that Apple has created.
So let me translate a little bit. Actually, كارن خلال المقدمة اللي تقدمت فيها هي حكت عن أهمية إمكانية الوصول. كارن هي بتشتغل مثلكم، بتصمم applications، وإمكانية الوصول جدا مهمة بهيدا الموضوع. ليه؟ لأنه نحن في أشخاص كتير بيعانوا من مشاكل معينة. لما نحن بنعمل تطبيق بخليهم يستعملوا له علاقة بمساعدتهم، فهيدا الشيء بيسهل عليهم حياتهم وله أهمية كتير كبيرة. هلأ yes, Karen, let me check.
I'm sharing again.
Okay.
Okay, good. I'm so sorry. All right. So, Hanan, thank you for the introduction. If you work with Apple products, Apple divides accessibility features into 4 different categories.
Alright, so لما أنتوا بتستعملوا أي أجهزة من أبل، فنحن عنا 4 أنواع من بنسميها الديسابيليتي أو صعوبات معينة. فعنا الأشياء العلاقة بالفيجن اللي هي الرؤية، أشياء العلاقة بالسمع، وأشياء العلاقة بالحركة، وأشياء العلاقة بالقدرات العقلية. So في 4 أنواع إلى علاقة بشو الأنواع اللي ممكن صعوبات ممكن تكون موجودة عند ناس مختلفين. Alright, Karen.
Thank you. So vision, it really focuses on people that have got low vision, color blindness, light sensitivity, and who are blind.
So بالنسبة للأشياء اللي لها علاقة بالرؤية، هو بيركز على الأشخاص اللي عندهم ضعف شديد بالنظر، الأشخاص اللي عندهم عمى الألوان، والأشخاص what was the last one, Karen?
Blindness, light sensitivity, blindness, color blind.
العمى الكامل، وكمان الحساسية من الضوء.
Then for hearing, they focus on deaf and hard of hearing.
اوكي. بالنسبة للسمع في تركيز على كمان اللي بيكون مثلا ما بيسمع أبدا.
For motor, they focus on limb difference, people in wheelchairs, and people that suffer from spasticity.
اوكي، سو كمان الاشخاص اللي عندهم مشاكل بالحركه، واللي هن نحن بنعتبرهم مقعدين، يعني بيستعملوا كرسي متحرك.
And then the last one for cognitive, they focus on people that are non-verbal, people with learning disabilities, people with learning disabilities like dyslexia and dysgraphia.
اوكي، بالنسبه للاشياء اللي بتكون لها علاقه عقليه نوعا ما، فهي عندنا الاشخاص اللي ما بيقدروا يتكلموا، ما عندهم الحصيله يعني ليتكلموا، وكمان عندهم صعوبات بالتعلم. يس كارن.
But you can't always think about disability so clear-cut in those 4 different categories. Think about your grandmother or your grandfather. They might have a problem with their hearing and a little problem with their vision. So sometimes disabilities are crossed over and you need to make accommodations for all of that as well.
طبعا اللي عم تقوله كتير مهم، انه مش ضروري دائما شخص يكون عنده نقص او يعني عدم قدرة على شيء معين، بس ممكن الأشخاص الكبار اللي عنا بعائلتنا مثلا مثل الجد أو الجدة ممكن يكون عندهم ضعف شديد بالنظر أو ضعف شديد بالسمع، فهن كمان بيقدروا يستعملوا هاي الأجهزة إذا نحن ركزنا على إمكانية الوصول.
All right, so let's have a look at what can be done with Apple products for people with disabilities.
اوكي خلينا نشوف شو ممكن ينعمل مع أجهزة أبل للأشخاص اللي عندهم هيدي المشاكل.
All right, so now you can see it's really powerful and it allows people with disabilities to live a life independently.
طبعا مثل ما شفتوا بالفيديو انه كثير هيدي الخصائص قوية جدا بتخول الناس انه يعيشوا بطريقة جدا عادية، بتساعدهم كثير بحياتهم ويكونوا مستقلين طبعا.
Right, so let's look a little bit at a couple of case studies and people that I found on the internet. So this is Clara, and she's 16 years old, like many of you, and she's a painter, and she's sold many paintings internationally, and she uses her iPhone and an iPad to communicate. So let's have a look at what she says.
16 years old and have already sold more than 700 paintings worldwide. Hi, my name is Clara Woods. I had a stroke in the safest place in the world, my mom's womb. The stroke brought me lots of challenges that I'm overcoming, and one of these is to develop a career and live with dignity. Today I'm a professional painter. I can't speak, write, or read, but I understand English, Italian, and Portuguese. You can Google my name to know more about me or start following my world.
بالنسبة لكلارا، كلارا عندها مشكلة، بس هي استخدمت العديد من الطرق المختلفة للتواصل، مثلا مثل لغة الإشارة، نسخ ولصق الكلمات، الرموز التعبيرية الإيموجي، تطبيقات التحويل النصي إلى كلام، وتطبيقات الاتصال البديلة والمكملة لحتى تقدر إنه تكون رسامة ومعروفة كمان. وفيكم تعرفوا أكثر عن كلارا إذا عملتوا سيرش على اسمها.
So yes, like Hanana said, Clara uses sign language, she uses copy and paste of words, she uses text-to-speech in apps, and she uses AAC apps, and those are alternative augmentative communication apps. And that's what she was using to communicate now during this video. This enables her to make herself heard. And it's really important. It's a very important part of her life to be able to communicate. All right, let's have a look at the next person. So this is Rudy. It's actually my father-in-law. And Rudy has got hearing loss. He's got some mobility issues, and he's not that stable on his feet. So we use his iPhone and his Apple Watch for many things.
Oh, okay. So بالنسبة لرودي في قرابة. So is he your father-in-law? That's what you
He's my
mentioned?
father-in-law, yes.
Okay. So بيكون أبو زوجة لكارن عنده صعوبات بالتنقل وباستخدام الأزرار الصغيرة على الآيفون، فهو بيستخدم طرق كتير مختلفة مثل الوصول المساعد اللي أكيد رح تحكي عنه بعد شوي، سماعات الاستماع بتقنية البلوتوث كمان، هيدي شغلة من الأشياء اللي بيستعملها.
So for my father-in-law, we use assistive access, but I'll show you what it looks like now on his phone. He uses Bluetooth hearing aids that are enabled to work with his iPhone. And he also uses sound recognition on his watch and on his phone so that he can hear if somebody knocks on the door, if our dog barks, if there's a fire alarm, if somebody's screaming. So we use many of the accessibility features for him. So let's look at what his phone would look like. So you'll see that all of the icons are nice and big. There's not a lot of clutter on the screen, and all the functions are very simplified so that it's easy for him to navigate because he's got a bit of a tremor in his hand, and it works easier for him on his phone. If you do want to switch on this feature, just be careful because it changes everything.
Yeah. سو مثل ما شايفين شو الاشياء التغيرات اللي انعملت على تليفونه لرودي. أزرار كلها كبيرة لحتى يقدر يشوفها ويستعملها بسهولة. ما في أشياء صغيرة منتشرة على التليفون. وكمان هيدي الخاصية إذا بدكم تغيروها انتبهوا لأنه بتغير كل شيء بالتليفون تبعكم.
All right, and the last person I want to introduce you is Lucy. And Lucy is blind and she's an influencer and she focuses on makeup tutorials on Instagram and TikTok. So let's see how she uses her phone.
لوسي هي شخص ما بيشوف وهي مؤثرة بتعمل فيديوهات إلى علاقة بالمكياج على التيك توك. فخلينا نشوف كيف ساعدها التليفون بهيدا الموضوع.
All right, so she uses a function on her phone called VoiceOver, and it makes a screen device into a tactile device with voice. So people that are blind can touch on their screen and VoiceOver will read back to them exactly what's happening on their screen. So hear what it sounds like.
Blind girl use Threads. This is Meta's new app called Threads. This is how I use it with my screen reader. I'm just going to swipe right.
About to make threading my entire personality. Button.
Same.
Like.
I can like,
Comment.
comment,
Button. Repost. Button.
repost,
Send. Button.
send.
2 replies.
I
Button.
can see the replies. That's cool.
8 likes.
I'm going to show you how I post.
Create post. Tab. Start a thread. Text field. Start a thread. Text field. Dictate. Button.
Threading every day.
Day post. Button.
Woo! Follow me on Threads.
واو. هاي الطريقة اللي لوسي بتستعمل فيها تليفونها بطريقة اللي هي ميزة الفويس اوفر لصناعة المحتوى لمنصات التواصل الاجتماعي وتسهيل الاستخدام كمان.
All right, so now that you've seen a couple of people that use accessibility features, some of them use it because they absolutely have to, and some people use it because they have acquired they've acquired a disability as they grow older or because of something that happened to them.
هيدي الأشياء اللي لها علاقة بإمكانية الوصول. في ناس عندهم مشاكل موجودة already بيستعملوها، في ناس مع تقدم العمر بيصير عندهم هاي المشاكل. بكلتا الحالتين بيكونوا جدا بيساعدوا.
Now, I want to talk to you about this thing. Have you ever seen one of these things at a intersection at a traffic light?
حدا فيكم شاف هيدي الصورة أو هيدا المنظر عند إشارات المرور مثلا؟
So this is called a curb cut, and they didn't exist. They only started existing in the 1960s. And it was because a whole bunch of people went to Berkeley University and they were in wheelchairs, and there were nowhere for them to go with their wheelchairs other than driving on the road. Or if there was a sidewalk, they could like ride on the sidewalk, but if they had to get off the sidewalk, they had to use people's driveways. So eventually they petitioned and they started creating curb cuts for people in wheelchairs.
هيدا الشيء ما كان موجود كتير، بس هو بيساعد الأشخاص لاستعمال الويل تشير، لأنه قبل كان في صعوبة يعني أنه يقدروا يمشوا بالويل تشير بشوارع معينة. Yes,
So now this curb cut is something we use every day. I ride my bicycle over those curb cuts. And I know many people have got babies and they push their strollers over that. And if you've got a suitcase that you're pulling, they go down those curb cuts. So this is called the curb cut effect. And what it basically means is something that was designed for people with disabilities becomes something that everybody uses, and it makes everybody's life easier.
اوكي هيدا الشيء انعمل من يعني من فترة قديمة مثل ما قلنا للأشخاص اللي عندهم كراسي متحركة، بس حاليا كل الناس صارت تستعملهم. يعني إذا في أم مثلا مع عربية البيبي لازم تستعملهم لتقطع، إذا عم تسوقوا مثلا بايسيكل نفس الشيء. فهي انعملت للأشخاص اللي عندهم مشاكل بس كل الناس عم تستخدمها.
So if we look at the curb cut effect, it's actually got a name now. It is the idea of a curb cut effect is that in the simplest terms, it makes something more usable for everybody, regardless of ability and disability.
اوكي سو هو بطريقه مختصره وسهله هيدا الافكت بيخلي كل شيء اسهل لاي حدا، مش خاص بس بالاشخاص اللي عندهم مشاكل معينه.
Now, I'm talking to you about this because I want you to keep this in mind when you are designing your apps. You need to think about creating an app that is accessible for everyone and not just a specific group of people.
اوكي سو ليش كارين عم تحكي بهيدا الموضوع؟ لانه لازم تفكروا بهيدا الموضوع لما انتم عم بتصمموا الابلكيشن اللي عم تصمموها. يعني لازم اكبر عدد ممكن من الناس يستسهلوا استعمال هيدي الابلكيشن، مش فقط نركز على شريحة معينة من الناس.
So there are three things that I want you to focus on. Your application must be clear, it must be robust, and it must be specific. And what do I mean by that? So if I say it has to be clear, the interface should have clear layouts with distinct buttons and menus and a clear call to action.
اوكي سو في 3 اشياء لازم تركزوا عليها لما بتكونوا عم بتصمموا التطبيق تبعكم. اول شيء الوضوح الكامل، بعدين يعني محدد، كل شيء لازم يكون محدد. فالوضوح انه انا بعرف على شو بدي اضغط لحتى اوصل لشو بالضبط، ما يكون في ضياع بشكل الازرار بالعدد الكبير للاشياء.
Now, the second point is if your app is robust, it needs to be an accessible app, and it must serve the widest variety of people, regardless of their particular ability or disability.
كمان لازم الابليكيشن تبعكم تخدم عدد كبير من الناس بغض النظر عن الاشخاص اللي عندهم مشاكل او الاشخاص العاديين. فانتوا لازم تفكروا باكبر عدد واكبر شريحه من الاشخاص اللي راح يستخدموها.
And then, if you look at the last point, specific, the interface should take the maximum advantage of all the available accessibility features that's available on iOS, which you are designing for.
سو لازم تكون جدا كمان واضحة انه من الانترفيس الاولى، الواجهة الاولى، يبين شو الاكسسبيليتي فيتشرز او امكانيات الوصول اللي مضافة على هيدا الجهاز.
Right. So going back to this, you can't just focus on these 4 things. You need to think of many, many more things.
اوكي سو اذا رجعنا لهيدي السلايد، مش بس الاربع اشياء اللي حكينا عنهم بدكم تركزوا عليهم، في اشياء كتير لازم تركزوا عليهم غير مشاكل السمع والرؤية والحركة والتفكير. في كتير اشياء. شو هن هاي الاشياء؟ What are these?
All
Okay.
right. So there's a lot of things, and these are not even all of them. If you are
Okay.
designing an app, you need to think of culture. You need to think of ethnicity, language, education, political beliefs, philosophical beliefs, religion, many, many things, body measurement, disabilities, whether handedness. Is your app designed for right-handed or left-handed people? When you design, you need to make sure that things are in the center so that whether a person is right-handed or left-handed, they can use that app that you've created.
سو لازم تركزوا على اشياء كتير مثل ما حكينا، مثلا اللغة، التعليم اللي متعلمه الشخص، يمكن العرق، الديانة، بنسميها البليف اللي هي يعني الشريحة اللي انتم بدكم تقدموا لها الابليكيشن، هن شو التفكير تبعهم، يعني هل هن رح يتقبلوا هيدي الابليكيشن او لا. مثلا بدكم تفكروا انه رح يكون في اتصال بالانترنت او لا، ممكن الموقع مثلا، ممكن البيئة المحيطة، في كتير أشياء، إذا كان بيستعملوا الإيد اليمين أو الإيد اليسار، ففي كتير تفاصيل لازم تفكروا فيها وأنتوا عم تشتغلوا على الابليكيشن تبعكم.
All right, so let's look at like two elements that's important out of this page. If I just take two of them and I focus on that. We live in the UAE and there's multiple different cultures that live here. And let's say I want to develop an app for different foods that are available in my neighborhood. I can't just design something that my cultural group will eat. I need to think of everybody else. So let's look at an app.
مثلا خلينا ناخذ مثال. نحن بالإمارات اوكي وبدنا نعمل تطبيق له علاقة بالأكل. لازم فكر أنا بأشياء بيعتمدوها بدولة الإمارات إلها علاقة بالأكل. ما بروح بحكي بعمل آب بتخدم ببلد أوروبي مثلا أو ببلد تاني. إذا عملته بيناسب هيداك البلد وحطيت الأكل اللي بياكلوه بالإمارات ما رح يمشي. فهيدي شغلة من الأشياء اللي لازم أنا انتبه لها كتير. Yes.
So let's look at this app. If you look at the app on the left-hand side, you'll see that these are Indian foods that I've created. Let's say we create an app and we want it to be used globally. If I only include Indian food, then I'm missing out on a whole group of people that won't be able to use my app or won't use my app at all because they don't eat Indian food. So I need to think about the area that I live in, the cultural significance that's around me, and also where my app will be used. And then I need to look at maybe including different types of foods. So you'll see that I included in the second app, on the second slide on the right-hand side, I included Emirati food, I included Italian food. And if I were to scroll down, there would be many, many other types of foods because that reflects the region in which I want to launch my app.
alright, so هيدا المثال جدا مهم لأنه بيفرجيكم إنه أنا حسب المكان اللي أنا فيه إذا بدي أعمل application إلها علاقة بالغذاء أو بالطعام لازم حط يعني مثلا إذا أنا بمكان معين مش بالهند وبعمل application فيها فقط أكل هندي هل رح تمشي هيدي الابليكيشن؟ أكيد لا. فمثلا المثال الثاني اللي هو على الإيد اليمين فينا نشوف إنه في أكلات متنوعة مثلا فتي بيتزا هيدي أكلات ممكن بأماكن كتير بالعالم بياكلوها فهيك أنا تأكدت أو رح أتأكد إنه شريحة كتير كبيرة من العالم رح تحب إنه تستعمل هيدي الابليكيشن فجدا مهم هيدا الموضوع.
All right, so that was just one of the very many, or actually two of them, because I looked at culture and I looked at location. But when you develop an app, you need to not have tunnel vision and just think about this one thing that I want to create. You need to think about all the other people that will be using your app. And the best way to do that is to show as many as possible people your app so that they can look at it and see whether it makes sense to them and whether you're missing something. Because oftentimes we do, because we are just so focused on what we are creating.
اوكي سو خلال العمل على الاب كتير مهم انه ما نركز باتجاه واحد نفكر دائما انه كتير عالم رح تستخدم هيدي الابليكيشن احسن طريقه انه نحن نسال ناس تانيين من شرائح مختلفه بالمجتمع يجربوا الاب تبعنا بعد ما نعمل البروتوتايب ويعطونا رايهم لانه كتير اوقات نحن بننسى اشياء معينه او ما بننتبه لها بس الاشخاص اللي جربوها رح يلفتوا لنا نظرنا ورح يقلنا شو النقص يعني ممكن هن يستسهلوا الاستعمال يمكن يقولوا مش واضح صعب الاستعمال فأي كومنت بتطلع منهم رح تساعدكم انكم تحسنوا بهيدا التطبيق.
All right, so there's my little food app, but I want to go back to like pure accessibility as well. And look at something that is very simple, color blindness. Now, color blindness is a very overlooked disability because oftentimes people don't think, well, you know, they just can't see that color. It's okay. But it has a huge impact on a user's experience of an app. If you look at the screen that I've got here, you can see the different types of color blindness and how people experience that.
اوكي بدنا نرجع نحكي عن إمكانية الوصول، وهو تحديدا عمل ألوان. عمل ألوان في كتير ناس ما بتعطي أهمية، لأنه بيعتبروا إنه اوكي في ألوان معينة ما بنقدر نشوفها مثلا أو ما بيقدروا يشوفوها، فما إلها هيدي الأهمية الكبيرة. بس بصراحة هي جدا مهمة. بهاي الشريحة اللي قدامكم تقدروا تشوفوا كيف الأشخاص بيشوفوا الصورة الحقيقية بطرق مختلفة.
So it's really important when you design your app that you put your app through a color blindness test to see whether what you have created actually makes sense. Oftentimes you'll see color blindness problems with buttons, as well as if you have things like graphs on your app, then it's very difficult to distinguish the different levels in that graph or where the button is because of color blindness.
اوكي، الاشخاص اللي عندهم عمى الوان كثير صعب عليهم يفرقوا بين الازرار والصور. صور معينه بيكون صعب عليهم انه يشوفوا الفرق بين هيدي الصور او الازرار. فكتير مهم انه انتم تجربوا التطبيق تبعكم ب different colors اللي هي مثل ما بيشوفوا الاشخاص اللي عندهم عمى الوان، لحتى تختبروا هن من نظرتهم كيف رح يشوفوا هيدا التطبيق، وهل فعلا بيشتغل معهم. يعني هل فعلا بيقدروا يفرقوا بين الأزرار، يشوفوا الجرافس بطريقة صح أو لا.
All right. So now let's start. The next thing that I want to show you is I'm going to start creating an app, and I'm going to work my way through this with many different iterations to try and get a good interface that will work for users. So we'll take it step by step and look at all the different things that you need to look at when you create just one screen in your app.
اوكي، هلا هي رح تفرجينا كيف ممكن انتم تشتغلوا على الاب تبعكم خطوه خطوه. رح نشتغل على سكرين وحده لحتى تشوفوا شو الاشياء اللي لازم تركزوا عليها وكيف بتبلشوا الستبس، يعني كل الخطوات. يس كارن.
Okay, so on our first screen, we're just looking at contrast. And contrast influences how easy it is to navigate that screen. And it influences how you look at it, if you can look at it for a long time, if it's jarring, if it doesn't work for you visually when you look at it. And then there's also how it influences text on that screen.
اوكي، وحده من الاشياء التباين، اللي هو بنقول له الكونتراست. الكونتراست بالعربي هو التباين. فهو بيأثر كيف الاب رح تكون جاهزه للاشخاص ليشوفوها. فكتير مهم بهيدا الاكزامبل او بهيدا المثال في كتير مشاكل بالتباين او الكونتراست. فيكم انتم تعرفوا شو هن المشاكل. So did you ask them the question? How
I haven't asked the question. Can you guys identify what the problems are?
اوكي، فيكم تقولوا شو المشاكل بهيدا التباين اللي بين التو سكرينز الموجودين؟
I think it's going to be difficult for the students to answer, but I see that they can see that there's problems. So let's look at the one on the left-hand side. So on the left-hand side, it's a very bright green, and it hurts my eyes, especially at night. It also makes it really difficult for me to see what the text is. I'm like really struggling to see what that text is. But if I just make the contrast a little bit higher and I use a duller green in the background, I can much easily read the text and see what's going on the screen.
اوكي، بالنسبة لهودي الصورتين كتير واضح انه الصورة اللي على اليسار او السكرين الشاشة اللي على اليسار اللون كتير فاقع بوجع العيون. هاي اول شغلة. تاني شغلة اللون الابيض على الخلفية ابدا مش واضح. بس إذا منقارنها بالشاشة اللي على اليمين فينا نشوف إنه اللون الأخضر مريح للعيون، وبنقدر نقرأ الكتابة اللي بالأبيض بطريقة جدا واضحة.
All right, and I can see here in the Q&A that a couple of people have answered yes. The white is too bright, and somebody else said the light green and the white is not clear. So yes, that is the problem.
أجوبتكم مزبوطة اللي حطيتوها على الشات.
All right, so let's look at the next screen. So font size and weight. Again, we've got the light green screen and we've got the dark green screen. The weight of a font is also very important. What do I mean with the weight? The weight is if you bold a font or if you make it a light font.
اوكي سو هون هلا نفس الشاشتين بس في تغييرات بحجم الكتابة وبالويت تبع الثقل تبع يعني قد ايه هي ثقيلة إذا بنعملها بولد أو خفيفة.
So again, if you look at the two, which one is more clear now? If you think that the left one is more clear, give me a bunch of thumbs ups. Okay.
اوكي إذا بتحسوا إنه الشاشة اللي على اليسار أوضح من اللي على اليمين اعملوا thumbs up. lots of thumbs up.
Yeah, very many. And if you think the right one in the dark green is more clear, give me smiley faces.
اوكي إذا شفتوا الشاشة اللي على اليمين أوضح حطوا smiley face.
Okay.
Smiley
So-
faces. Many
My
hope.
My preference definitely is the light green one on this screen because I think it's clearer and the weight of the font is better and it's also bigger. I don't know, Hanan, what do you think?
I prefer the right side of the screen, which is to the right side, because I still can feel the left side is like it's painful for my eyes. So maybe it depends on how you see the contrast of the colors. I think it's different from person to person.
Yeah. See,
Maybe,
this is important. This is
Yeah.
part of the iterative process of creating an app to see
Yeah.
what works and what doesn't work. So thank you, Hanan. This is very good feedback.
Thank you.
All right, let's look at the next one. So font type. Now, font type is so important. Font type can not only tell me about your app and your personality, but it can also tell me about the function of your app. And if you're using a font like the one I used on the left-hand side, that is like all swirly and is beautiful, it's great, yes. But there's a lot of people that can't read cursive. So this is not going to work for them. So you really need to sit and think about what font you're going to use.
Okay, my fire alarm is on in the building. Anyway, I will continue, that's fine. So هون عم نحكي عن نوع الخط اللي عم نستعمله. هل هو خط واضح جدا أو اللي شايفينه على اليسار فيه كتير حركات. So كمان كتير مهم. I think I will, it's very annoying for everyone. I will just mute it. Okay.
We can't hear it, Hanan.
You can't hear it. You can hear
No.
my voice. Oh, that's perfect.
But are you
Okay.
sure it's just a taste and it's not a real
I
fire?
will check and come back. Okay, you can continue. I'm sorry for that. Just give me 2 minutes.
Okay. All right. So if you guys are looking at the screen, again, which one do you prefer? Give me smiley, oh no, thumbs up for the left-hand screen with the font that is all swirly. Okay, so a lot of people like it. And then give me smiley faces if you prefer the right-hand screen. Okay, so the right-hand screen is still the most favorite. I'm getting so many smiley faces. Okay, let's look at the next one. Okay, so now navigation. Navigation is again really important. And think back to earlier when I showed you the navigation of the app that for colorblind people. It's really important that you have very clear and distinct contrasts between your buttons where you want to give people actions to do and what is the background. So again, I've created one decorative element and one very functional element. Which one do you think is functional? If you think that the right-hand one is functional, then give me smiley faces. And if you think the left-hand one is functional, give me thumbs ups. Oh, wow. Okay, I think both of them. Again, my preference this time would be the left-hand one because I think the button is much easier and better to see rather than this funky little arrow that is at the bottom of this app. Okay, let's look at our next one. I hope that Hanan is okay and that she doesn't have a fire in her building. So for our next one, did I go back to font type? Sorry, guys. Okay, again, back to navigation. Remember that I said that there are 3 things that you need to look at. You need to be clear, it needs to be robust, and it needs to be specific. That button on the right-hand side that has got the arrow leaves absolutely nothing to the imagination. Users will immediately know that they have to click that next button to go to the next page to see the next action. So these are some of the things that we do when we develop apps to make sure that we take care of all the different elements that a user will interface with when they are working on an app. All right, let's see. I just want to see if there's any questions that I should look at. Okay, I think, Hanan, everything okay?
Yeah, everything is okay and it's off now. Sorry again for that.
No, not a problem. So Hanan, on this last slide, I was saying to the students that it's really important that if you think back to what I was saying earlier on about color blindness and buttons and the contrast between buttons, if you look at the 2 screens, both of them are clear. But if you look at the right-hand side one, you'll see that there's an arrow. So that leaves absolutely nothing to the imagination. You know exactly what you have to do. So if you couldn't see the button clearly, you would know very well that you need to press on the arrow to go to the next.
So إذا فكرتوا بكل شيء حكينا فيه عن الأزرار، عن الألوان، عن التباين بالألوان، عن الخط كيف لازم يكون، تقل الخط، نوعية الخط، بتشوفوا هودي الشاشتين قدامكم. اثنيناتهم واضحين، بس الفرق الوحيد هو الارو اللي هو السهم اللي موجود. هيدا السهم كتير واضح انه شو الشيء الثاني اللي لازم تعملوه لتروحوا للشاشة اللي بعدها. اكيد انه تضغطوه، بعتقد هيدا اوضح من الشاشة اللي على اليسار.
All right. So now that I've created a screen that works, and I think I've got a good interface, and I think that everybody can work with it, I'm going to test whether this still works with the color blindness test. So let's have a go.
سوري. هلا بعد ما عملت انا شاشة واضحة وكل شيء فيها واضح وبتشتغل، بدي جربها بعيون الاشخاص اللي عندهم عمى الالوان.
All right, so this is what my layout looks like at the end. And then let's see what it looks like for somebody with red color blindness.
Okay.
Okay.
لشخص عنده عمى ألوان بالنسبة للون الأحمر رح يشوف الشاشة بهاي الطريقة.
And now for green color blindness.
الأشخاص اللي عندهم عمى ألوان بالنسبة للون الأخضر رح يشوفوها بهاي الطريقة.
And lastly, for blue color blindness.
Okay,
even though we lose a lot of color, the interface is still clear and somebody can still navigate this page.
حتى لو اللون ما قادرين يشوفوا اللون الأصلي، بس الواجهة جدا واضحة ورح يقدروا إنه يكملوا فيها الشغل.
All right. So now that I've created an interface that I think is workable, and I can use this design language that I've created for my app, I can continue to create the rest of the pages in my app, knowing that I've created something that is still visually pleasing and is accessible to many different people, and everybody will be able to use it. So from here on, I can continue to the rest of my app that I want to work on.
اوكي. اهم شغله الشاشه الرئيسيه بعد ما عملنا عليها الاختبار، يعني اكدنا انه كل شيء فيها مزبوط، وحتى عند الأشخاص اللي عندهم مشاكل بالنظر بيقدروا يمشوا فيها. بقدر إني بوضوح وبسهولة روح من الشاشة الأولى للثانية، فمعناتها هلأ بقدر كمل الشغل على التطبيق تبعي.
So I see a question here in the questions from Dua. So Dua, this interface that I used over here, this colorblindness.com, and the test that I was using, one of the functions was also for people that can't see any color at all, that can only see black and white. And I tested the app, this design that I've created, and it still worked with that as well. So in that case, it's really important to make sure that your contrasts are high enough between your text, your buttons, and your background to make sure that even somebody that can't see any color can still use your app.
اوكي، سؤالك دعاء كتير مهم، لانه انت سالتي عن اللي عندهم عمى كامل بالالوان. سو هي عملت تجربه لهول الاشخاص واشتغل مع الاب بطريقه انه حتى الاشخاص اللي عندهم عمى كامل بالالوان بيقدروا يشوفوا الاشياء اللي موجوده كلها. ليش؟ لانه في تباين او كونتراست بين الكلام والخلفيه، فكان كل شيء واضح.
Then I also want to answer another question from Habiba. And Habiba is asking if the app that they design have to be accessible to all people. Now, Habiba, I want to say that it's very admirable that you want to create an app that is accessible to everybody, but accessibility is a journey. And you'll start out like thinking that you've got a lot of things covered, or you want to work with a specific group of people and you create accessibility for them. But then you'll find out later that maybe that accessibility feature that you created is not accessible for other people. And app developers generally work on an iterative basis when they create apps. And as they see that there are more things that they need to incorporate to make their apps more accessible, they add those features in. All I want you to do when you're creating your app for this wonderful challenge is to start thinking about accessibility and maybe bring one or two features in that's very specific for people with disabilities, so that we can see that you guys are thinking about these things for when you win and you go to the Swift Accelerator program.
اوكي، حبيبه، بالنسبه لسؤالك اللي كان هل الابلكيشن اللي انتم عم تشتغلوا عليها لازم تغطي كل انواع المشاكل واللي حكينا عنها؟ اكيد لا، لانه هي عباره عن رحله انه انتم تخلوا الابلكيشن يشتغل عند كل انواع الاشخاص اللي عندهم مشاكل. بس اكيد اهم شيء حاليا بهيدا التحدي انكم تدخلوا نوع او نوعين من الاكسسبيليتي لحتى نحن نشوف انه انتم عم تفكروا بهودي الناس وحطيتوا شيء يساعدهم بالتطبيق اللي انتم عملتوه. فاكيد ما حتقدروا تغطوا كل شيء، بس دائما بينشغل على التطبيق منطوره من مره لمره لحتى يشمل اكبر عدد من الاشخاص.
Then I see that Dua has got another question. She's very sharp. She says that the font is fuzzy on the ones that we did the color blindness test on. And Dua, you are right. And the answer for why this is that way is because these are screenshots that I had to take and bring into my keynote presentation. And you lose a little bit of the fidelity of the image when you do that.
اوكي، سو دعاء عندها سؤال انه لاحظت انه شوي في غباش بالصوره او عدم وضوح بالكلام المكتوب. فمزبوط حكيك دعاء، لانه هيدي الاشياء ماخوذه سكرين شوت من الاب الاساسيه لحتى تحطها كصوره داخل هيدي الكينوت لحتى انتم تشوفوها، فهو هيدا السبب.
All right, so now that we've created an app that works nicely, we've tested it, it works with color blindness, contrast is nice and high, buttons are clear, text is clear. There's one more thing that a lot of people forget about, and that's why I put it here. Sorry, guys, let's just go through this again. There we go.
Karen, there is one question from Yahya.
Yes.
I think it's very important question. Maybe you would like to address it. We talked about this during our last session, I think.
can we incorporate more than one SGD in the app? Should we only have one?
Yeah,
I think, yeah, here you should look at just focusing on one of those SDGs, because it makes that your app is more focused and your message is clearer.
السؤال هو كان انه بالنسبه الثيم المطروح، يعني هل فينا ناخذ اكثر من نوع؟ نحن عرضنا 5، فلا الافضل تركزوا على واحد، لانه بالتركيز على واحد بتطلع ابلكيشن افضل بكثير من انه تركزوا على اكثر من واحد. Yeah, sorry, Karen, please.
No, not a problem. Last question that I'm seeing here is from an anonymous person. What if we have colorblind and it will be a little bit darker or not clear? When you go into the colorblind settings on an iPhone or an iPad or a Mac, it does change the color, obviously, like you've seen earlier on, but that's only for the person that have got color blindness, not for everybody else. So if you work with a device and you switch on the color blindness features, it basically just puts an overlay over everything that changes it so that they can see better, but it won't affect the app as is at all.
Yes, Karen, you can continue.
Can I continue? All right. Okay. So last thing that I want to show you about your app is transitions. And oftentimes people create all of these funky transitions when they go from one thing to another. And a group of people that we haven't paid a lot of attention to today is people with vision that triggers things like migraines and headaches, or their vision doesn't move that fast, or it is difficult for them to focus on something that moves a lot. So this is oftentimes you see it in transitions. So let's look at this transition. That is not a good transition. You need to look at a transition that is easy on the eye and uniform.
اوكي، سو هون عم تحكي عن الانتقال من شاشة لشاشة. بيسكلي في ناس عندهم مشاكل انه الحركات الكتيرة بالشاشات بيعملوا لهم وجع راس مثلا او مايجرين، او بتخليهم صعب انه يركزوا. فمشان هيك الانتقال من شاشة لشاشة لازم يكون جدا مدروس، ما يكون في حركات كتير، لانه هيدي الشغلة كتير ناس ما بتحبها، يعني بتزعجها اكثر ما انه واو انه الاب كتير حلوة فيها حركات. جربوا بعدوا عن هيدي الانتقالات بهي الطريقة.
All right. Now that is one of the big things that you need to look at. And I try to highlight all the things that I think are really important that you need to think of when you create your app. And I think Dua and Habiba kind of preempted this last slide of mine, where I'm saying breaking down accessibility into smaller, manageable slices over time means that you don't have to eat the whole cake at once. It's really important to look at accessibility and do little bits, little bits, little bits. And together it makes a huge impact. You can't do it all at once.
Yeah. سو مثلا بهيدي السلايد انه بتلخص موضوع إمكانية الوصول موضوع كتير كبير، مستحيل تقدر تخلصه مرة واحدة، لازم يتقسم لقطع صغيرة ينشغل عليه بطرق بسيطة، وحدة ورا وحدة ورا وحدة، لحتى نقدر نكمله. فهو مثل هيدا الكيك اللي ما فيك تاكله مرة واحدة. اوكي.
Thank you, Hanan. So now I want to ask if you guys have got any questions about accessibility. Please put them in the Q&A and I'll do my best to answer your questions. So I see that Advik has got a question. Does color blindness affect readability? No, color blindness does not affect readability at all. As long as your contrast is high enough on the screen, then it's not a problem at all. one of my team members have got ADHD. How can we help him to focus with us while we are working on the app? This question is an anonymous one for privacy reasons. All right, so for students with ADHD or anybody that's got ADHD, it's really difficult to focus on what they're doing. And it's difficult to work in a team as well, especially if you've got a lot of people talking and saying, I want to do this and I want to do that, and this one is this, and look at that and look at that. It's better if you work in a small group, you don't talk over each other, and you create small tasks that you do together and then move on to the next one, instead of trying to throw all of these things at your whole team and telling them, okay, you know, do this, this, and this, and this. Do it step by step, small tasks at a time, and together you guys can solve the problems that you want to solve together. That's the best advice I can give you. All right, let's look. If our app doesn't use one aspect such as voice. Ooh, Arjan, you need to give me a little bit more information. I don't quite know how to answer your question. Let's look at Yusuf's question. Does dark and light mode affect anything, or do they have to be in the app, or is it up to us? So dark and light actually does affect the apps, but Apple is really clever, and they've created wonderful overlays for apps that manages dark and light. So you don't have to worry about that. If you want to show us a dark and a light layout in your app, that would be great. But you don't have to create that for everything in your app. How we get an app that every people see the same colors. Oh, so this is an anonymous post. So somebody is asking, how can they create an app that everybody can see the same colors, or see the colors the same way? That's not possible. Not possible at all. Even if you look at, you know, if I look at my husband and myself, if we look at something, I'll say, you know, that's pink, and my husband will look at it and go, no, it's more red. Everybody perceives color differently. Like generally speaking, everybody, you know, sees like yellow, green, blue, purple. But people with color blindness even perceive those colors, but in a completely different hue to what we see it. So it's not possible for people to see color exactly the same. Hanan, do you want to explain that?
اوكي سو عم تحكي عن موضوع العمل الالوان مره ثانيه، انه الالوان كثير بتختلف من شخص لشخص كيف بشوفوها، واكيد بتختلف بطريقه اكثر اذا كان الشخص عنده عمى الوان. سو اذا اشخاص ما عندهم عمى الوان بيشوفوا الالوان الاخضر والازرق بطرق مختلفة، وأنا متأكدة إنه كلكم مرقتوا بهيدا الموضوع. بس حتى عمل الألوان كتير بيكون يعني غير تماما اللون الأساسي، مثل ما شفنا بالسلايدات اللي قبل اللي هي عرضتهم.
Okay, so Adyan, thank you for clarifying your question. Adyan is asking if our app doesn't use one aspect such as, oh, it moved, where did it go? Such as voice, can we integrate parts such as voiceover to use parts? Yes, you can integrate voiceover, and you can integrate voice into your app design. That would be really nice to see.
Okay. في سؤال عن الفويس، إذا فيكن تدخلوا فويس بالتصميم. يس، فيكن تدخلوا فويس بالتصميم، هيدا شيء أوكي يعني.
So there's another question that says, what if we can't help with some disabilities in the app? It doesn't matter if you can't help with some disabilities in your app. The idea is just that you create an app that is easy to use for everyone. And all of those things that I just showed you on the green app that I developed are not really accessibility things that I showed you. They're all design things that I created to make the app more usable for everybody else. It's not an app for a specific disability, but it's an app that everybody can use.
يا طبعا الفكرة من إمكانية الوصول إنه مش ضروري تخدم كل الناس اللي عندهم مشاكل، بس هي تكون ابلكيشن سهل التعامل معها، أي شخص بيقدر يمسكها ويتعامل معها. وطبعا كتير حلو إذا أنتم بتفكروا بنوع من الأنواع و يعني تضموه للابليكيشن تبعكم، هيك بتكونوا كمان ضفتوا نقاط حلوة وبتعطوا فرصة أكثر للابليكيشن تبعكم إنه يفوز. بس أهم شيء إنه يكون التطبيق سهل إنه نتعامل معه، من طريقة الألوان، الترانزيشنز، سماكة الخط، لون الخط، نوع الخط، هاي الأشياء جدا مهمة.
So I've got one very interesting question here. So what if we do something more about Islamic religion than other religions? Now, that is a very interesting question because you're creating an app about Islamic religion. You can't make that app for other religions. It is based on specific content for a specific audience, and that's absolutely fine. Create that app, just make it accessible for everybody that will be using that app.
اوكي، في سؤال كتير حلو انسأل، انه اذا بده ينعمل اب بس هو بيركز اكثر على الديانة الإسلامية، وكيف ممكن يعني هيدا انه ما حيكون له اكسس لباقي الديانات، وهيدا الشيء اوكي، يعني هيدي الابليكيشن رح تخدم كل الشريحة اللي هن اسلام، بس المهم ركز على طريقة عمل الاب انه تكون سهلة، ويكون الدخول إلى سهل، وطريقة الانتقال من شاشة لشاشة واضحة جدا. فأكيد بتقدروا تعملوا هيك شيء أكيد. يعني ما في أب بتغطي كل الاحتياجات. Karen, I'm just telling them that you will never ever have an app or design an app that can cover all the needs of all people. This is impossible. It will be very general and it will not be helpful at all. So that's why it's okay to focus on يعني شريحة معينة من الناس. أكيد هيدا الشيء مطلوب، بس بنفس الوقت تكون سهلة وسلسة وسهلة الاستخدام.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If like the app that I designed was an app for like urban gardeners. Not everybody are urban gardeners. Not everybody is interested in that. So that app wouldn't appeal to everybody. But what I can do is I can create the app and I can give language options, because we in this region, I can have Arabic as one option, English as another option, and maybe add another language like French. That means that most people in this region will be able to use that app. But it doesn't mean, you know, that I have to make the app so that somebody in a wheelchair can use the app specifically. It's really about creating the app that it is accessible for more people than just the original group that I intended.
هيدا مثال كتير حلو. يعني هي عاملة اب عن شيء معين. هيدا الاب مش كل الناس رح يكونوا interested فيه، بس كيف تقدر انه تخليه more accessible؟ انه تعطيه لغات متعددة، الانجليش والعربي، ويمكن تضيف لغة ثالثة. بهي الطريقة الاب صار يستعمل باكثر من بلد، بدل ما هو يستعمل فقط بالبلاد العربية مثلا. فهي شيء كتير مهم انه كمان تنتبهوا له.
So somebody else also asked, what if the app that they are using carries some symbolic reference? Would that affect their accessibility? So again, if you are using a color for a very specific reason, like let's say you do a poem, you do an app that does poems about colors, and the app or the poem that it creates is about red and it makes a red background. You can't change that. That is the essence of what your app does. So I wouldn't worry about that. Again, somebody that's colorblind will have a colorblind filter over that, and they'll see red in the way that they see red. Just again, be aware that your contrast is high enough between the background, your buttons, and your text.
هاي كمان مثل تاني، انه اذا ابلكيشن مثلا له علاقة بالشعر، وشعر له علاقة بالالوان، فيعني صعب انه نعملها اكسسبل لكل الناس، بس انه ممكن نتأكد انه اذا حدا عنده عمى الوان بيقدر يشوف الالوان مع الكلمات اللي طالعة لحتى تكون الآب مستعملة قدر الإمكان أكبر شريحة من الناس. There is a question, is it okay to show that the app have an accessibility setting options but not implemented? What do you think, Karen?
Yes, some apps do have a button that says, click on this for accessibility, and then it changes the whole interface. So yes, that's okay. And what I also want to say is it's really difficult to show accessibility features while creating an app prototype. But I want you to be mindful of that when you create your app so that we can see that you thought of all the different options that are out there.
يعني أهم شغلة إنه أنتوا تكونوا مفكرين بكل الأشياء اللي حكيناها، وحسب ما بيزبط بالأبليكيشن تبعكم بتطبقوا. ما ضروري تطبقوا كل الأفكار، ممكن تطبقوا بعض منها إذا بتزبط مع التطبيق اللي أنتوا عم تعملوه.
All right. I just want to give some time for YJ if there are any questions about the challenge. So YJ, I don't know if you want to join us and just take some of the questions from the students about the challenge.
If we want to include language settings, which language do we include? I think this depends on the location of where the app will be used. So it's up to you, I think. Yeah.
I agree with that. It really depends on who's going to use your app and which region you want to host that app. In this region, French, Arabic, and English are really good options to look at. All right, I think that's it, Hanan.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Many questions. I want to say thank you to everybody. And somebody in the questions said, please say hi to me, but you're an anonymous person. So hi to the anonymous person.
Hi to everyone.
Hello to everyone. And thank you very much for all the thumbs up and the emojis that you've shared with us. And it's nice to see a group of students that are so engaged with a session like this. So good luck with your apps. I hope you create beautiful apps. And for those of you that are winners and go through to the Swift Accelerator program, remember this session on accessibility and create some accessible apps. All right. Thank you so much.
لكم جميعا، وكانت جلسة ممتعة معكم. إن شاء الله تكونوا استفدتوا، وأكيد موفقين، وإن شاء الله تكونوا من الرابحين. Good luck. Thank you so much. Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Anan.
Bye.
Bye.